Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're continuing with our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam at Canto 7, Chapter 14, text number 26. And right now we're on text 26. O King Yudhishthir, at the time prescribed for reformatory ritualistic ceremonies for oneself, one's wife, or one's children, or during funeral ceremonies and annual death ceremonies, one must perform the auspicious ceremonies mentioned above in order to flourish in fruit of activities. Purport: the Vedas recommend many ritualistic ceremonies to be performed with one's wife, on the birthdays of one's children, or during funeral ceremonies, and there are also personal reformatory methods like initiation. These must be observed according to time and circumstances and the directions of the Shastra. Bhagavad Gita strongly recommends Gyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam. Everything must be performed as indicated in the Shastras. For Kali Yuga, the Shastras enjoin that Sankirtan Yajna be performed always. Kirtaniya Sadahari. All the ritualistic ceremonies recommended in the Shastras must be preceded and followed by Sankirtana. This is the recommendation of Srila Jiva Goswami. Narada Muni continued, now I shall describe the places where religious performances may be well executed. Any place where a Vaishnava is available is an excellent place for all auspicious activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the support of this entire cosmic manifestation, with all its moving and non-moving living entities, and the temple where the deity of the Lord is installed is a most sacred place. Furthermore, places where learned brahmanas observe Vedic principles by means of austerity, education, and mercy are also most auspicious and sacred. Purport: in this verse it is indicated that a Vaishnava temple where the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is worshipped and where Vaishnavas are engaged in the service of the Lord is the best sacred place for performing any religious ceremonies. At the present day, especially in big cities, people live in small apartments and are not able to establish a deity or temple. Under the circumstances, therefore, the centers and temples being established by the expanding Krishna consciousness movement are the best sacred places for performing religious ceremonies. Although people in general are no longer interested in religious ceremonies or deity worship, the Krishna consciousness movement gives everyone the chance to advance in spiritual life by becoming Krishna conscious. Auspicious, indeed, are the places where there is a temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, in which he is duly worshipped, and also the places where there flow the celebrated sacred rivers mentioned in the Puranas, the supplementary Vedic literatures. Anything spiritual done there is certainly very effective. Purport: there are many atheists who oppose the worship of the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the temple. In this verse, however, it is authoritatively stated that any place where the deity is worshipped is transcendental. It does not belong to the material world. It is also said that the forest is in the mode of goodness, and therefore those who want to cultivate spiritual life are advised to go to the forest. Vanam gato yad dharim ashriyeta. But one should not go to the forest simply to live like a monkey. Monkeys and other ferocious animals also live in the forest, but a person who goes to the forest for spiritual culture must accept the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as shelter. Vanam gato yad dharim ashriyeta. One should not be satisfied simply to go to the forest. One must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this age, therefore, since it is impossible to go to the forest for spiritual culture, one is recommended to live in the world. We are constructing communities to give shelter to devotees and worship the deity in the temple. The deity cannot be worshipped except by devotees. Temple worshippers who fail to give importance to the devotees are third class. They are Kanishta Adhikaris in the lower stage of spiritual life. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.2.47, Acharam eva haraye pujam ya shatahe hate natad bhakteshu chaneshu Sabhakta prakrita smitaha. A person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple but does not know how to behave toward devotees or people in general is called a prakrita bhakta or a kanishta adhikari. Therefore in the temple there must be the deity of the Lord, and the Lord should be worshipped by the devotees. This combination of the devotees and the deity creates a first-class transcendental place. Aside from this, if a grihastha devotee worships the shalagram shila, or the form of the deity at home, his home also becomes a very great place. It was therefore customary for members of the three higher classes, namely the brahmanas, kshatriyas, and vaishyas, to worship the shalagrama shila, or a small deity of Radha Krishna or Sitaram in each and every home. This made everything auspicious, but now they have given up the deity worship. Men have become modernized and are consequently indulging all sorts of sinful activities, and therefore they are extremely unhappy. According to the Vedic civilization, therefore the holy places of pilgrimage are considered most sacred, and still there are hundreds and thousands of holy places like Jagannath Puri, Vrindavana, Hardwar, Rameshwara, Prayag, and Mathura. India is the place for worshipping or for cultivating spiritual life. The Krishna consciousness movement invites everyone from all over the world without discrimination as to caste or creed to come to its centers and cultivate spiritual life perfectly.
30 to 33. The sacred lakes, like Pushkara, and places where saintly persons live, like Kurukshetra, Gaya, Prayag, Pulahashrama, Naimisharanya, the banks of the Palgu River, Setubandha, Prabhas, Dwarka, Varanasi, Mathura, Pampa, Bindu Sarovara, Bhadarikashram, Narayanashram, the places where the Nanda River flows, the places where Lord Ramachandra and Mother Sita took shelter, such as Chitrakuta, and also the hilly tracts of land known as Mahindra and Malaya. All of these are to be considered most pious and sacred. Similarly, places outside India, where there are centers of the Krishna consciousness movement and where Radha Krishna deities are worshipped, must all be visited and worshipped by those who want to be spiritually advanced. One who intends to advance in spiritual life may visit all these places and perform ritualistic ceremonies to get results 1,000 times better than the results of the same activities performed in any other place. Purport. In these verses, and in verse 29, stress is given to one point. Harer achar shritash che chaye, or Harer archa. In other words, any place where the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by devotees is most significant. The Krishna consciousness movement is giving the population of the entire world a chance to take advantage of Krishna consciousness through the ISKCON centers, where one may perform deity worship and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and in this way obtain results with effectiveness increased 1,000 times. This constitutes the best welfare activity for human society. This was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, as it was predicted by him in the Chaitanya Bhagavata. Pritivityachayat nagiradigram sarvatra prachar hoy bimaranam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted the Hare Krishna movement with installed deities to spread to every village and town in the world, so that everyone in the world might take advantage of this movement and become all auspicious in spiritual life. Without spiritual life, nothing is auspicious. Mogasha moga karmano, moga jnana vichetasaha. No one can become successful in fruitive activities or speculative knowledge without being Krishna conscious. As recommended in the Shastras, everyone should be very eagerly interested in taking part in the Krishna consciousness movement and understanding the value of spiritual life. 34. O King of the earth, it has been decided by expert, learned scholars that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, in whom all that is moving or non-moving within this universe is resting, and from whom everything is coming, is the best person to whom everything must be given. Purport. Whenever we perform such religious act in terms of dharma, whenever we perform some religious act in terms of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, we must perform it according to the time, place, and person, kala, desha, patra. Narada Muni has already described the desha, place, and kala, time. The kala has been described in verses 20 through 24, beginning with the words ayane vishuve kuryad vita pate dina chaye. And the places for giving charity or performing ritualistic ceremonies have been described in verses 30 through 33, beginning with sarangsi pushkaradini chitranyarha shritanya yuta. Now, to whom everything must be given is decided in this verse. Harir evaika urvisha yanmayam vai characharam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the root of everything, and therefore he is the best patra, or person, to whom everything must be given. In Bhagavad Gita 5.29 it is said, Bhuktaram jagatapasam savaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam yatmamam shantim richchati. If one wants to enjoy real peace and prosperity, he should give everything to Krishna, who is the real enjoyer, real friend, and real proprietor. It is therefore said, Yatat tador mula nisheshchanena tripyanti tat skandabucho pishakaha prano pahadas chaditendriyanam tataiva sarvarhanamachyuteja. By worshipping or satisfying Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, one can satisfy everyone, just as one can water the branches, leaves, and flowers of a tree simply by watering its root, or as one satisfies all the senses of the body by giving food to the stomach. Therefore, a devotee simply offers everything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead to receive the best results of charity, religious performances, sense gratification, and even liberation, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. 35. O King Yudhishthir, the demigods, many great sages and saints, including even the 4 sons of Lord Brahma, and I myself, were present at your Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. But when there was a question of who should be the first person worshipped, everyone decided upon Lord Krishna, the Supreme Person. Purport. This is a reference to the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaja Yudhishthir. In that meeting, there was a great turmoil over selecting the best person to be worshipped first. Everyone decided to worship Sri Krishna. The only protest came from Shishupal. And because of his vehement opposition, he was killed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The entire universe, which is full of living entities, is like a tree whose root is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Achyuta, Krishna. Therefore, simply by worshipping Lord Krishna, one can worship all living entities. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 10.8, the Lord says, Aham sarvasya prabhavu matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam bhuta bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. People are very much anxious to give service to other living entities, especially to the poor. But although they have manufactured many ways to give such help, actually they are expert in killing the poor living entities. This sort of service or mercy is not recommended in the Vedic wisdom. As stated in a previous verse, it has been decided, niruktam, by expert saintly persons that Krishna is the root of everything, and that worshipping Krishna is worshipping everyone. Just as supplying water to the root of a tree means satisfying all of its branches and twigs. Another point is that this universe is full of living entities from top to bottom on every planet. Jiva, Rashi, Bhir, Akirna. Modern scientists and so-called scholars think that there are no living entities on planets other than this one. Recently, they have said that they have gone to the moon but did not find any living entities there. But Srimad Bhagavatam and the other Vedic literatures do not agree with this foolish conception. There are living entities everywhere, not only one or two, but Jiva Rashi Bhihi, many millions of living entities. Even on the sun there are living entities, although it is a fiery planet. The chief living entity on the sun is called Vivaswan. Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam. All the different planets are filled with different types of living entities according to different living conditions. To suggest that only this planet is filled with living entities and that others are vacant is foolish. This betrays a lack of real knowledge. 37. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has created many residential places like the bodies of human beings, animals, birds, saints, and demigods. In all of these innumerable bodily forms, the Lord resides, with the living being as Paramatma. Thus he is known as the Purusha Avatara. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 18:61 it is said, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesha arjuna tishtati pramayan sarvabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. The living entity who is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead exists on the mercy of the Lord, who is always with him in any form of body. The living entity desires a particular type of material enjoyment, and thus the Lord supplies him with a body which is like a machine. Just to keep him alive in that body, the Lord remains with him as the Purusha, Shirdakshayi Vishnu. This is also confirmed in Brahma Samhita 535. Eko pyasaurachaditam jagad andakotim yatshaktirasti jagadanda chayayadanta andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the Personality of Godhead Govinda, who enters the existence of every universe and every atom by one of his plenary portions and thus manifests his infinite energy throughout the material creation. The living entity, being part and parcel of the Lord, is known as Jiva. The Supreme Lord, Purusha, remains with the Jiva to enable him to enjoy material facilities. 38. O King Yudhishthira, the Supersoul in every body gives intelligence to the living soul. O King Yudhishthira, the Supersoul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the Supersoul is the chief within the body. The Supersoul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 15:15 it is said, Matak smitir jnanam apohanam cha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in his localized aspect gives intelligence to the individual soul as far as he is able to grasp it. Therefore, we find the individual soul in different high and low positions. A living entity with the body of a bird or beast cannot take instructions from the Supreme Soul as adequately as an advanced human being. Thus, there are gradations of bodily forms. In human society, the perfect Brahmana is supposed to be the most advanced in spiritual consciousness, and further advanced than the Brahmana is the Vaishnava. Therefore, the best persons are the Vaishnavas and Vishnu. When charity is to be given, one should take instruction from Bhagavad Gita 17:20. Datavyam iti yadhanam diyate nupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha taddanam satvikam smritam. That gift which is given out of duty at the proper time and place to a worthy person and without expectation of return is considered to be charity in the mode of goodness. One should give charity to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, for thus the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be worshipped. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya comments, Brahmadi stavaranishu na vishesho hare kvachit vyakti matra visheshena tarat mayam vadanti cha. Beginning from Brahma down to the ant, everyone is conducted by the Supersoul, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriday Sharaduna Tishtati. But because of a particular person's advancement in spiritual consciousness, he is considered to be important. Therefore, the Brahman Vaishnava is important, and above all, the Supersoul, this personality of Godhead, is the most important personality. Can you open the shutters in the back there? 39. My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. Purport. As it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam 12.3.52, Kriteya Dayato Vishnam Tretayam Yajato Mukai Dvapare Paricharyayam Kalota Dari Kirtanat. Whatever result one obtained in Satya Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, can also be obtained. One can also obtain in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In Satya Yuga, every person was spiritually advanced, and there was no envy between great personalities. Gradually, however, because of material contamination with the advance of the ages, disrespectful dealings appeared even among Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Actually, an advanced Vaishnava is to be respected more than Vishnu. As stated in the Padma Purana, Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnur Aradhatam Param. Of all kinds of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. Tasmat Paratanam Devi Tadiyanam Samarchanam. And recommended more than worship of Vishnu is worship of the Vaishnava. Formerly, all activities were performed in connection with Vishnu, but after Satya Yuga, there were symptoms of disrespectful dealings among Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnav is he who has helped others become Vaishnavas. An example of one who has converted many others into Vaishnavas is Narada Muni. A powerful Vaishnava who has converted others into Vaishnavas is to be worshipped, but because of material contamination, sometimes such an exalted Vaishnava is disrespected by other minor Vaishnavas. When great saintly persons saw this contamination, they introduced worship of the deity in the temple. This began in Treta Yuga and was especially prominent in Dwapara Yuga, Dwapare Paricharyayam. But in Kali Yuga, worship of the deity is being neglected. Therefore, chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is more powerful than deity worship. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set a practical example in that he did not establish any temples or deities, but he profusely introduced the Sankirtan movement. Therefore, Krishna consciousness preachers should give more stress to the Sankirtan movement, especially by distributing transcendental literature more and more. Especially by distributing transcendental literature more and more. Especially by distributing transcendental literature more and more. This helps the Sankirtan movement. This helps the Sankirtan movement. Whenever there is a possibility to worship the deity, we may establish many centers. But generally, we should give more stress to the distribution of transcendental literature. But generally, we should give more stress to the distribution of transcendental literature. For this will be more effective in converting people to Krishna consciousness. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Acharya meva hareye, ujam yashareye hate, natad bhakteshu chanyeshu, sabhakta prakrita smritaha. A person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not know how to behave toward devotees or people in general is called a prakrita bhakta or kanishta adhikari. A prakrita devotee or neophyte devotee is still on the material platform. He certainly engages in worshipping the deity, but he cannot appreciate the activities of a pure devotee. It has actually been seen that even an authorized devotee who is engaged in the service of the Lord by preaching the mission of Krishna consciousness is sometimes criticized by neophyte devotees. Such neophytes are described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sarva Prani Samanana Samarthanam Avagyas Spardhadi Matam Tu Bhagavat Pratimaiva Patram Ityaha. For those who cannot properly appreciate the activities of authorized devotees, deity worship is the only way for spiritual advancement. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is clearly said, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tar Pravartana. Without being authorized by Krishna, one cannot preach the holy name of the Lord throughout the entire world. Nevertheless, a devotee who does so is criticized by neophyte devotees, Kanishta Adhikaris, who are on the lower stages of devotional service. For them, deity worship is strongly recommended. 40. Sometimes a neophyte devotee offers all the paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as the deity. But because he is envious of the authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service. Sometimes a neophyte devotee offers all the paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as the deity. But because he is envious of the authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service. I kind of picked that verse out at one point as, I don't know if I even want to bring it up, but there are, splinter groups that have come off of ISKCON where there's this idea that Prabhupada's the only guru, and then sometimes when they establish temples, no matter how well funded they are, there's a question that comes up. What about the deity worship goes? Is Krishna present in the deity and so forth? And when I found this verse, it confirmed what I had thought and had been saying, which is that if senior devotees, advanced devotees, wouldn't go to such a place out of non-appreciation of the mood there, and they wouldn't be invited anyway or welcome there, then how effective would the deity worship be there anyway? And this verse, to me, confirms that fact, that if somebody has an institutionally critical view of Vaishnavas, especially advanced Vaishnavas, and then they worship the deity, the deity worship is not really effective because the deity there is not pleased if the Vaishnavas are not honored properly. And in the light of having said that, I'll just read the verse and the purport and move on. Sometimes a neophyte devotee offers all the paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as the deity. But because he is envious of the authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service. Purport. Deity worship is especially meant for purifying the neophyte devotees. Actually, however, preaching is more important. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, Nacha tasman manusheshu kashchan me priyakritamaha. If one wants to be recognized by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he must preach the glories of the Lord. One who worships the deity must therefore be extremely respectful to preachers. Otherwise, simply worshipping the deity will keep one in the lower stage of devotion.
Text 41. My dear king, of all persons, a qualified Brahmana must be accepted as the best within this material world, because such a Brahmana, by practicing austerity, Vedic studies, and satisfaction, becomes the counterpart body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. From the Vedas, we learn that the Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Person. Every living entity is an individual person, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the Supreme Person. A Brahmana who was well versed in Vedic knowledge and fully conversant with transcendental matters, becomes a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore one should worship such a Brahmana or Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is superior to a Brahmana, because whereas a Brahmana knows that he is Brahman, not matter, a Vaishnava knows that he is not only Brahman, but also an eternal servant of the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, worship of a Vaishnava is superior to worship of the deity in the temple. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Shakshadari Tvaina Samasta Shastrahi. In all the scriptures, the spiritual master, who is the best of the Brahmanas, in all the scriptures, the spiritual master, who is the best of the Brahmanas, the best of the Vaishnavas, is considered to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This does not mean, however, that the Vaishnava thinks himself God, for this is blasphemous. Although a Brahmana or Vaishnava is worshipped as being as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such a devotee always remains a faithful servant of the Lord, and never tries to enjoy the prestige that might accrue to him from being the Supreme Lord's representative. 42. My dear King Yudhishthir, the Brahmanas, my dear King Yudhishthir, especially those engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord throughout the entire world, are recognized and worshipped by the Supreme Person. Oh, my dear King Yudhishthir, the Brahmanas, especially those engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord throughout the world, are recognized. My dear King Yudhishthir, the Brahmanas, especially those engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord throughout the entire world, are recognized and worshipped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the heart and soul of all creation. The Brahmanas, by their preaching, sanctify the three worlds with the dust of their lotus feet, and thus they are worshipable even for Krishna. Purport. As admitted by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, Nachatasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritama. The Brahmanas preach the cult of Krishna consciousness all around the world, and therefore, although they worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord also calls them as worshipable. The relationship is reciprocal. The Brahmanas want to worship Krishna, and similarly, Krishna wants to worship the Brahmanas. In conclusion, therefore, Brahmanas and Vaishnavas who are engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord must be worshipped by religionists, philosophers, and people in general. At the Rajasuya Yajna of Maharaja Yudhishthir, many hundreds and thousands of Brahmanas were present. Yet Krishna was selected to be worshipped first. Therefore Krishna is always the Supreme Person, but by his causeless mercy, he recognizes the Brahmanas as dearmost to him. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Ideal Family Life.
Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. Narada Muni continued, My dear king, some Brahmanas are very much attached to fruitive activities. Some are attached to austerities and penances, and still others study the Vedic literature. Whereas some, although very few, cultivate knowledge and practice different yogas, especially bhakti yoga. A person desiring liberation for his forefathers or himself should give charity to a Brahmana who adheres to impersonal monism, jnana nishta. In the absence of such an advanced Brahmana, charity may be given to a Brahmana addicted to fruitive activities, karmakanda. Excuse me, you addicted to fruitive activities? Purport. There are two processes by which to get free from material bondage. One involves jnana-kanda and karma-kanda, and the other involves upasana-kanda. Vaishnavas never want to merge into the existence of the Supreme. Rather, they want to be everlastingly servants of the Lord to render loving service unto Him. In this verse, the word anantyam ichata, the words, refer to persons who desire to achieve liberation from material bondage and merge into the existence of the Lord. Devotees, however, whose objective is to associate personally with the Lord, have no desire to accept the activities of karmakanda or jnanakanda, for pure devotional service is above both karmakanda and jnanakanda. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmanya navratam. In pure devotional service, there is not even a pinch of jnana or karma. Consequently, when Vaishnavas distribute charity, they do not need to find a brahmana performing the activities of jnanakanda or karmakanda. The best example in this regard is provided by Advaita Goswami, who after performing the Shraddha ceremony for his father, offered charity to Haridas Thakur, although it was known to everyone that Haridas Thakur was born in a Mohammedan family, not a Brahmana family, and was not interested in the activities of jnanakanda or karmakanda. Charity, therefore, should be given to the first-class transcendentalist, the devotee, because the Shastras recommend Muktanam apisithanam narayana parayanaha sadurlabha prashantatma kotishrapi mahamuhe. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. A Vaishnava is in a higher position than a Jnani, and therefore Advaita Acharya selected Haridas Thakur to be the person to accept his charity. The Supreme Lord also says, Name bhaktash chaturvedhi madbhakta shwapachapriya tasmai deyam tato krahyam sacha pujo yatahyayam. Even though a person is a very learned scholar of the Sanskrit Vedic literatures, he is not accepted as my devotee unless he is a pure in devotional service, However, even though a person is born in a family of dog-eaters, he is very dear to me if he is a pure devotee who has no motive to enjoy fruit of activity or mental speculation. Indeed, all respect should be given to him, and whatever he offers should be accepted. Such devotees are as worshipable as I am, Hari Bhakti Vilas. Therefore, even if not born in a Brahmana family, a devotee, because of his devotion to the Lord, is above all kinds of Brahmanas, whether they be karmakandis or jnanakandis. In this regard, it may be mentioned that Brahmanas in Vrindavan who are karmakandis and jnanakandis sometimes decline to accept invitations to our temple because our temple is known as the Angareji temple or the Anglican temple. But in accordance with the evidence given in the Shastra and the example set by Advaita Acharya, we give prasad to devotees regardless of whether they come from India, Europe, or America. It is the conclusion of the Shastra that instead of feeding many Jnanakandi or Karmakandi Brahmanas, it is better to feed a pure Vaishnava, regardless of where he comes from. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:30. Apichet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak satureva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. Thus, it doesn't matter whether a devotee comes from a Brahmana family or a non-Brahmana family. If he is fully devoted to Krishna, he is a sadhu. 3. During the period for offering oblations to the demigods, one should invite only 2 brahmanas, and while offering oblations to the forefathers, one may invite 3 brahmanas, or in either case, only 1 brahmana will suffice. Even though one is very opulent, he should not endeavor to invite more brahmanas or make various expensive arrangements on those occasions. Purport: as we have already mentioned, Srila Advaita Acharya during the generally observed ceremony to offer oblations to the forefathers invited only Haridas Thakur. Thus he followed this principle, Name bhaktash chaturvedi mad bhakta shwapachapriya. The Lord said, as it is not necessary that one become very expert in Vedic knowledge before he can become my bhakta or devotee. Even if one is born in a family of dog-eaters, he can become my devotee and be very dear to me in spite of having taken birth in such a family. Therefore, offerings should be given to my devotee, and whatever my devotee has offered me should be accepted. Following this principle, one should invite a first-class Brahmana or Vaishnava, a realized soul, and feed him while observing the Shraddha ceremony to offer oblations to one's forefathers. 4. If one arranges to feed many brahmanas or relatives, during the Shraddha ceremony, there will be discrepancies in the time, place, respectability, and ingredients, the person to be worshipped, and the method of offering worship. Purport: Narada Muni has prohibited unnecessarily gorgeous arrangements to feed relatives or brahmanas during the Shraddha ceremony. Those who are materially opulent spend lavishly during this ceremony. Indians spend especially lavishly on 3 occasions: at the birth of a child, at marriage, and while observing the Shraddha ceremony. But the Shastras prohibit the excessive expenditures involved in inviting many brahmanas and relatives, especially during the Shraddha ceremony. 5. When one gets the opportunity of a suitable auspicious time and place, one should, with love, offer food prepared with ghee to the deity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then offer the prasad to a suitable person, a Vaishnava or Brahmana. This will be the cause of everlasting prosperity.
Text 6. One should offer prasad to the demigods, the saintly persons, one's forefathers, the people in general, one's family members, one's relatives, and one's friends, seeing them all as devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport: As above mentioned, it is recommended that everyone distribute prasad, considering every living being a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Even in feeding the poor, one should distribute prasad. In Kali Yuga, there is a scarcity of food almost every year, and thus philanthropists spend lavishly to feed the poor. For this they invent the term Daridra Narayana Seva. This is prohibited. One should distribute sumptuous prasad, considering everyone a part of the Supreme Lord, but one should not juggle words to make a poor man Narayana. Everyone is related to the Supreme Lord, but one should not mistakenly think that because one is related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has become the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Such a Mayavad philosophy is extremely dangerous, especially for a devotee. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore strictly forbidden us to associate with Mayavadi philosophers. Mayavadi Bhashya Shunali Hoye Sarvanash. If one associates with the Mayavad philosophy, his devotional life is doomed. Text 7. A person fully aware of religious principles should never offer anything like meat, eggs, or fish in the Shraddha ceremony, and even if one is a Kshatriya, he himself should not eat such things. When suitable food prepared with ghee is offered to saintly persons, the function is pleasing to the forefathers and the Supreme Lord, who are never pleased when animals are killed in the name of sacrifice. Text 8. Persons who want to advance in superior religion are advised to give up all envy of other living entities, whether in relationship to the body, words, or mind. There is no religion superior to this. Persons who want to advance in superior religion are advised to give up all envy of other living entities, whether in relationship to the body, words, or mind. There is no religion superior to this. Text 9. Because of an awakening of spiritual knowledge, those who are intelligent in regard to sacrifice, who are actually aware of religious principles, and who are free from material desires, control the self in the fire of spiritual knowledge, or knowledge of the absolute truth. They may give up the process of ritualistic ceremonies. Purport. People are generally very much interested in karma kanda, ritualistic ceremonies for elevation to the higher planetary systems. But when one awakens knowledge, people are generally interested in ritualistic ceremonies, but when one is interested in such elevation and engages in the objective of life, the objective of life is to stop completely the miseries of birth and to return home to Godhead. For the platform for activities. On seeing the person engaged in performing the sacrifice, animals meant to be sacrificed, they are merciless sacrifices of the sacrifice. Most satisfied by killing us will surely kill us. Purport. Animals Lord Jesus Christ, when 12 shocked, sacrificed animals in the city, therefore the Jewish system of religion, the religious system, Old Testament commandment, however, not killed in the name of animals. The increasing number of food is most abominable and is condemned herein, unless one is merciless, sacrifice animals, either in the name of religion or for food.
Yes.
Previous chapter described list of holy places. You can get 1,000 times benefits. Does that also refer to outside of India?
Oh yeah.
And
Definitely.
I noted that Srila Prabhupada.
That's why Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj decided to leave the world from Gitanagari, just to show that principle.
It didn't mention Navadvip or Mayapur.
Well, there's there's a classical list of holy places that are generally mentioned when you talk about the holy places in India, like Hardwar, and I can't remember what was mentioned there. But oftentimes, when Prabhupada refers to the list, he caters to that list. However, when you look at the Navadvip Dham Mahatmya and other literatures, Vrindavan Dham and Mayapur are really the two most vital dhams, especially in Kali Yuga. In fact, there are statements that if somebody comes here and then goes to other dhams, they're actually in some kind of illusion, because these are the main dhams, especially in this age of Kali Yuga, and other dhams don't have the same potency that these dhams have. So one should stay at Govardhana Hill, is my conclusion. Yes, Prabhu. One more point on that from the gentleman from Oroville, California.
Thank you.
Which may or may not be there anymore.
We're praying for the residents, just in case. There is a shastra that says that once you actually realize what Vrindavan is, that if you then go somewhere else to a place of pilgrimage, purify yourself for whatever reason, it's an offense.
Also, we were talking to Devaki Pran this morning about the Dham, and we quoted a verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Deyam Sada Paribhavabnam Abhishta Doham Tirtasparam Shiva Varinchi Nutam Sharanyam Pratyarti Ham Pranatapala Bababdi Potam Vande Mahapurushate Charanadavindam. In that verse, the Acharyas have said that the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are the repository of all the holy places, all the holy tirthas. So no matter where you live, even if it's South America, if you offer obeisances to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you get the result of going to all the holy places, visiting all those places. Save yourself a bundle on tickets. Yes, Nagar Kirtan Prabhu.
Just appreciated the second to last verse in the the previous chapter, saying that of all persons, a qualified Brahmana must be accepted as the best within this material world, because such a Brahmana, by practicing austerity, Vedic studies, and satisfaction, becomes the counterpart body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I liked it because it was mentioning the practice of satisfaction as qualifying a Brahmana as being the best within the material world. So I like that idea of practicing satisfaction.
Nice, very nice point. Prabhu, you had a point? Oh, who else? Okay. Nandu.
Hare Krishna. There's a nice addition to that point about the holy places.
Yes.
I noticed that in the word for word, Srila Prabhupada says, for Archa Ashrataha, he says places where the deity of Radha Krishna is worshipped, such as big American cities like New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, and European cities like London and Paris, or wherever there are centers of Krishna consciousness.
These are oases in the middle of these.
So very, very, it resonated, and it really made a lot of sense that giving that powerful praman from the Shastra, that how it is totally nonsense. That kind of philosophy which promotes that we should not respect some senior Vaishnavas and all. It's very much resonated to me.
Nice. I've always said if they don't invite Giriraj Maharaj to come to the place, or if Giriraj Maharaj wouldn't go to the place, then what good is it? I'm talking about our ISKCON Giriraj Maharaj. He's a sadhu. I mean, if someone would invite him or want him to be present, or if you could ask the question, why is he not attracted going there, then how could Krishna possibly be residing there?
And
just my humble opinion.
Other point I think in the same with Nagar Prabhu's point, I think in the purport it was mentioned, it resonated that how where it says like even worship of devotees is more than even Lord, and then Prabhupada quoted that Aradhanam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param Tatte. So first time, I don't know, it stuck to me very deep that how worshipping of Vaishnavas is much more important. Though I heard this verse many times, but it was when it was coming in that whole context when we were reading then it hit to me much more prominently that how worship of Vaishnavas is so superior.
Continuing our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam at Canto 7, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings, we're taking up at text number 11. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually aware of religious principles is not heinously envious of poor animals. Heinous. They put me genius. Tell you what I'm going to do for you, Vaisesika. How's it spelled? H-E-I-N. Heinous. Hatefully or shockingly evil. Abominable. Heinous. Origin, Middle English from Anglo-French. Heinous. From heine, hate. From hair to hate. Of Germanic origin, akin to Old High German has, which means hate. Heinous.
Look up deity. Rhymes with anus. Look up deity. The Sanskrit word for sin.
Huh?
N-A-S.
What?
It rhymes with the Sanskrit word for sin. It's not etymologically related. It's just pointing out that it's an interesting coincidence.
I see.
I don't think it matters how you pronounce deity, because if you pronounce it deity, everyone's going to say, why is he pronouncing it wrong?
Deity.
Anyway, that solves it right there. And what's the other one you wanted? It's deity, not deity. That was something out of... What other word did you want? Okay. Heinous, deity. Deity. Okay. Therefore, day by day, one who is actually, is that where we are? Who is actually aware of religious principle is not heinously envious of poor animals, should happily perform daily sacrifices, and those for certain occasions, with whatever food is available easily by the grace of the Lord. Purport: the word dharmavit, meaning one who knows the actual purpose of religion, is very significant. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 1866, Sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja. Becoming Krishna conscious is the topmost stage in understanding of religious principles. One who reaches this stage performs the archana process in devotional service. Anyone, whether a grahastha or a sannyasi, can keep small deities of the Lord suitably packed up, or if possibly installed, and thus worship the deities of Radha Krishna, Sita Ram, Lakshmi Narayan, Lord Jagannath, or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by offering food prepared in ghee, and then offering the sanctified prasad to the forefathers, demigods, and other living entities as a matter of routine daily work. All the centers of our Krishna conscious movement have deity worship programs very nicely going on, in which food is offered to the deity and distributed to the first-class Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and even to the people in general. Chanting place right at Giri Raj's lotus feet. You get 1,000 times more hearing power.
And the last question is that the last verse we read about the animal, so it says that they were there fearing in their mind that, so whether or not it was the case when they were doing the right sacrifice, like where we say that they will get the next life, the human form, when it was done the proper sacrifice. So this was applied to that kind of cases, like animals are fearing in that time also. The last verse that we read.
Well, it's a little bit enigmatic, because in so many cases we hear about the sacrifice of animals from the Vedic, even from the Vedic perspective, as being somewhat tinged with sinful activities. On the other hand, we hear so many times about how it's simply a test to see if the mantras work and that the animal gets new life. I haven't read anything specific, so I don't want to comment past that, except for it's a little bit of an amorphous area, and I've read other discussions on this about sacrifice of animals. But the way Prabhupada presents it is that in previous ages, when people really knew what they were doing, then there was really no harm to the animal. And in other contexts, he says that, it's a sinful activity. So one would have to draw one's own conclusion from that. I mean, if you do get a new life, who likes to have their head chopped off?
I have a question about the verse in previous chapter where it says that how by satisfying Krishna we satisfy everybody in the universe. So could you give a practical example of that? Say if somebody is worshipping Krishna in their home, how somebody is sitting in other part of the universe, in what way do they get benefited from that in a practical way?
Well, first of all, look at it from the other point of view, that if somebody isn't worshipping Krishna, what good can they do for anyone, including themselves? People think I'm the friend, but actually Krishna says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, I'm the friend. I help all living entities. He's the only one who actually can help all living entities. And so many people, big philanthropists, as was pointed out here, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was very fond of pointing out, philanthropist means animal killer. Because for the sake of feeding so many people, they kill animals, and then they feed people the animals, which means poor animals. And it is a fact that people, although they may be well-meaning, their philanthropy is misplaced. They don't know how to help other people. So one fact is, if somebody's worshiping Krishna, they get the intelligence and the wherewithal to actually help other people, which means to bring them closer to Krishna and to be able to help them. So somebody who's a staunch worshiper of the deity will be full of knowledge, full of compassion, without envy, and all these qualities will arise within such a person, and then they can help the whole world like Prabhupada did, giving access to unlimited transcendental knowledge, a shelter in times of distress and catastrophe and so many things. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oroville, California.
When will that stop? Maybe it will be wiped off the earth and then I won't. Yeah, to your point, how it is that someone who's worshiping here can help someone in another planet. Well, it's very simple. Krishna's in
That was his question?
Oh, what was the point that he was making?
It was?
The point he was making.
Yeah, like, because
Are you talking about the Shraddha ceremony?
no, like, as devotees we understand that how worshipping Krishna will help everybody, but somebody may question that, hey, you are sitting and worshipping here, how are you helping a poor person in India or poor person in some other part of the world? You will never get in touch with them. So how are you practically helping that person whom you will probably never come in touch in your life? So I guess just some practical explanation of that.
Well, when Prahlad Maharaj was making the prayer to Lord Nrsingadev, and then Lord Nrsingadev said, you know, not only will your father be benefited, but 21 generations before him and after him will be benefited. So the fact is that Krishna is in the heart of every living being, and he knows everything. He knows who's been connected with whom. He knows everything. So sorry.
Well, I just add to that when such a question comes up, it's important. When such a question comes up, it's important to ask what you mean by helping somebody else. Because it's just like when someone says, "Can you show me God? Can you prove there's God?" Then you have to ask. Well, you don't have to, but it's recommended that you define what they consider valid evidence to produce that they will accept. What kind of evidence will you accept that there's God? If you want me to show him to you, let's establish that first. So you say, help somebody, in some other place in India. What do you mean by help them? How, going down that road and asking, what kind of help could you offer? You send them a box of crackers or something like that, and how do you propose to help somebody actually? What does that mean?
Another point that struck me during the reading was that in analyzing who was worshipable, more or less, the person who makes other Vaishnavas, the Vaishnava who makes other Vaishnavas is the most worshipable. So we should try to make other people Vaishnavas.
Yep.
I was appreciating how Srila Prabhupada focused on this point of deity worship and preaching, and how deity worship is important, but preaching is far more important. And he said it again and again. He said that if one worships a deity but doesn't know how to respect preachers, they'll remain on the lowest platform. And other statements like that really stood out to me. And so I was thinking in terms of our movement that taking the totality of Srila Prabhupada's statements, as much as someone like me can, it seems like preaching is very, very much the forefront of his consciousness and his desires for us. And what then does that mean for, for example, a movement in which in many places, unfortunately, the deity worship which was established at a certain standard is maintained only with great difficulty, often at the expense of the Sankirtan movement. How do we, not that we can necessarily solve the problems of the world right now in this room in a couple of minutes, but is there anything to be said about that? Balancing these two aspects of our these two margs, and what it means when sometimes.
Well, Prabhupada did say that if you don't continue chanting, hearing and chanting properly, that after I leave, you will say, "What great burden did he put around my neck? You hung a stone around my neck, great burden." And we have to emphasize first and foremost hearing and chanting. When that's going on properly, then there's the natural enthusiasm to worship the deity. And also, every yogi has some kind of burden to carry. If you're a Bhajananandi, you have to recluse yourself to some place and live without association very much, and you have to perform some austerities. If you're a Goshtiyanandi, you have to maintain the deity, and at the same time preach. Both things have to go on. The Panchratrik Vidhi has to go on, and the preaching has to go on at the same time. And our great burden is to figure out how to do that. And in the process of taking that burden, we become enlightened. We have to take responsibility for the movement, and we can't just say, well, let's just relax all the the rules and take it down to bare bones because Prabhupada just didn't understand. No, he understood that it's necessary for us to worship the deity at a high standard. First of all, because it pleases Krishna, and second of all, because of what it makes of us to do it, to be able to stay in a pure condition. So both of them have to go on at a very high standard, and the means to do that has to be discussed amongst those in the community to see, okay, well, it's a great burden now. How could you reduce the burden on the few devotees that are doing it? One way would be for more training, for instance. If more people are trained in how to do it, and also, for instance, more Brahmins are created from the body of devotees that can also, help in the deity worship. Many hands make light. How does it go? Make light work. Like that. Yes, Prabhu? Bhakta Matt? Go ahead, because you haven't gone in yet, and we'll pass it to Gopal.
On this, I hear the argument all the time made by Prabhupada about Jesus saying, "Thou shalt not kill." And it's specifically in that example where Jesus went into the temple and threw them out, he was more concerned with them turning the temple into a den of thieves than he was about killing animals. Because even for me last year, when I was reading the Bible and trying to garner spiritual knowledge, in Leviticus, the priests would dress in all white robes, and they would slaughter the animals, and they would pour the blood on the robes. And it's mentioned throughout the Bible many times that it's now okay to eat certain animals. And so, in response, almost like what Gopal was saying the other day about killing animals, I think that when you make that argument with a Christian, they go, well, it's in the Bible, I can eat an animal, it's there, it's no big deal. So I've found that whenever I talk to Christians about recently about this, I have to go from the health aspect of it, because if the health aspect challenges their belief system, then they have to put their entire belief system into question as well, if that makes sense. So the "thou shalt not kill" thing just doesn't seem to work on Christians so much, because they're it's all throughout the Bible. And that was one of the reasons why I stopped reading the Bible. I got to that point in the Bible and I was like, I can't read this. This is not, I don't know what this God is all about, but I can't handle this. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, just one thought is that, when Prabhupada when he makes such arguments, I don't think he's trying to be completely precise in, going into the Christian theology, which, he didn't study minutely, but he is trying to call them out on certain principles, even if he's not applying it in a way that is accepted by mainstream Christianity. It's his way of getting some grip, and it's like he pushes on that point again and again. Yeah, but what about this principle? And even though it may not accurately address the way the Christians see it, it does give a jumping off point for the whole discussion about the culture of violence to animals and how it relates to spirituality.
Yeah, and when Prabhupada was talking with Cardinal Danelu, who was one of the top cardinals in Europe at the time, very highly respected, and he stayed on this point. And the reason he stayed on the point was because it brought out the fact that how they justify it is that the animal has no soul. That takes them right into the philosophy of life and why they're cruel and heartless and all the things that Jesus taught. It all it's embodied in that concept. If you're going to treat living beings like that, God's the father of all living beings, and they just all he could do was squirm, and it was very effective.
Prabhupada also pointed out in one morning walk that if you're going to eat animals, if you have to eat animals, wait till they die naturally, especially cows he was talking about. And so, he would concede, okay, you want to eat meat, then wait till they die naturally. And it was in that same vein, why commit the violence to the animal? Go, Paul.
Really appreciated 7.15.8. A person who wants to advance in superior religion and are advised to give up all envy of other living entities, whether in relation to the body, words, or mind. There is no religion superior to this.
Yeah, and what's the number there? 7.15.8. 8. And just... Yeah.
Wanted to add to that, it's interesting, the Sanskrit word for envy. For word, Prabhupada says here, it's dandasya, causing trouble because of envy. So it's envy, but doing something out of envy and making others suffer.
Yeah, it's also coming right after the verse where it's criticizing those who are killing in the name of sacrifice. That's a kind of envy, malice towards other living entities, killing them for the sake of religious advancement. Any other thing? Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to also appreciate the same verse, that it's especially in the world today where people have so much discomfort towards religion for different reasons, whether it's in India or even in the West. This kind of really sets it apart that superior religion, which means giving up envy towards all living entities. And I was just thinking how Sankirtan really fits right in there. That if you don't engage in Sankirtan, then we're really not practicing that.
As a continuation of that thought, when Prabhupada talks about violence in the Bhagavad Gita and elsewhere, his definition is a little more proactive than most people's. His definition of violence includes stopping the preaching of Krishna consciousness, or not giving people the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. That's violence. In other words, you actually have to be active in giving out the mercy in order to be considered non-violent. You can't just say, well, I don't hurt anybody. It doesn't work in Prabhupada's world or in the world of the Bhagavatam. You actually have to be compassionate and go out of your way to save people from the slaughtering process of the material world by giving them knowledge. Otherwise you are violent. I used to tell people for a while, when I was in the San Francisco airport and I had a booth, and then I'd show them the book and then I'd ask for a donation. And I would say that And we're doing this to help people all over the world who are suffering from a serious ailment called avidya, which means ignorance. I just say it as like a fact, like we're helping people who are suffering from this really heavy ailment. I say it's called avidya, or ignorance. And then I go on talking, and so we ask everybody to give a donation. They go, oh yeah, that sounds pretty serious, you know.
There are a few registered cases in USA already.
There are a few registered cases. It's reached epic proportions, especially in certain parts of the country. Epidemic proportions, I mean.
I was appreciating text 5 of the 15th chapter, because it was saying how if one does find the proper time, place, then with love, offering this delectable prasad cooked in ghee to the deity, and then to some respected Vaishnava or Brahmana. And I guess I like that verse because the other day I tried some of the ghee that Gopal Champu Prabhu had, and I was really amazed. I was really shocked how good it was. And so good. And it just got me thinking when I read the verse that it's really a nice way to prasadam and serving it, and just all goes into those kind of menial tasks. It's all meant to please someone, and how the whole conception that Prabhupada said it's devotional service. Bhakti means service, and so to develop some skill level which enhances another person's pleasurable experience is kind of what it's all about.
Nice.
Word to add. It's interesting in the verse. In the verse it says Muni Anna. There is no word ghee. It's just the food for sages, and Prabhupada says food cooked in ghee for saintly persons.
What's it called?
It's the standard. Muni Anna.
Muni Anna. Muni Anna. That's a nice name too. Muni Anna Das. Food for sages. That could be a good restaurant name too. Muni Anna. Food for sages. Unaccepted, eh? Okay.
We would like to...
oh, here you go.
Even though Bhaktimat...
That doesn't sound very loud to me. I don't know, whenever Maharaj gets it, it's just like... It's not off? Let's hear, try it again. Please.
Let's try it again. Even though when I first met Mahdi, I had no idea what he was doing, but right from the get-go, as soon as he got a brahmachari book in his hands and he started reading, and he said, "Hey, can I be a brahmachari?" I mean, it was
you want
right.
to talk into the mic.
It was spontaneous. It was spontaneous.
Go ahead, Maharaj. This is good. Please don't stop. Well, we couldn't hear you at all. You're unaware.
I doubt that. So ever since then, I've been kind of going back and forth, because this is a little bit soon, in a sense, to do this. He's not been around very long, and he's certainly not initiated yet. But he's serious. I happen to know him very well, and I'm willing to take this risk. Yeah. So we're going to give him saffron.
It's not sannyas. Don't freak out.
As an encouragement, I think we should we were talking about making devotees, and making devotees means you don't make it harder and harder and harder and harder and harder, and pretty soon there aren't any brahmacharis, there aren't any full-time devotees, and there aren't any ashrams, and it becomes something else. We just heard about the varnashram system, and there's 4 ashrams in the varnashram system. The varnashram system isn't just the grahastha ashram, it's the things that we read made abundantly clear. So we'd like to present this cloth to you.
Let me say a few words too.
Oh, absolutely.
Just that I've known His Holiness Kesava Bharati Maharaj since 1973, and I know him to be a touchstone because of who he is. I don't know if I know any other devotee as well as Kesava Bharati Maharaj, but I do know one thing: he has a completely pure heart. One of the evidence of that is that he was best friends with Jayananda Prabhu, who is certifiably a pure devotee. And like attracts like. They lived in the same house. They were best friends. And Jayananda Prabhu and Kesava Bharati Maharaj were as close as any two devotees could be. There are many other evidences, but Maharaj has also lived up to what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said in the purports we just read. A person who makes other devotees, who has that influence on others, is actually a Vaishnava. And the ones who make more and more devotees are considered the most elevated of Vaishnavas. So I've seen Kesava Bharati Maharaj sit in one place and just talk to devotees, talk to prospective devotees, and then they're convinced. And so that's one part. And the other part is that Maharaj has dedicated his life to the instruction that Prabhupada gave both of us in 1974 in San Francisco, which was very direct, and he told the two of us while we were sitting right in front of him that you must also read my books. And when Maharaj took this completely to heart, I mean he's always done it, but to heart as his main service in life, it has a certain kind of potency that's now starting to take effect in the hearts of devotees like you, Matt, and other devotees wherever Maharaj goes and does this, and online and so forth. And is also, picking up steam as a movement in North America, where we have a whole committee who are developing this concept of increasing the reading of Prabhupada's books in groups all over North America as a panacea. So on all these accounts, this is representative. I know it's very important to Maharaj, because Bhakta Matt, ever since he came, I've been hearing about you from Maharaj. And the other thing is that whatever happens in this room here in Govardhana during Kartik has a special effect. I've seen it. I mean, I've been living in this room for the last maybe 17 years. We've had this hearing and chanting going on since then. Maybe I've been in this room 15 years. The first 2 years we were on the roof. But when there's a vow made or blessing given or an idea that's germinated here in this room during Kartik, I always see that it's the arrangement of Giriraj himself, and that there's something very special in it. So the way that you described how you came here, because the energy carried you along, that's the internal potency, and obviously culminating here, or continuing here, is the mercy of Krishna manifest in his most merciful form of Govardhana Hill. So okay. Therefore, on this day, which is November 14th, 2018, Thursday, his Jupiter. It's the Sandhya. On behalf of His Holiness Kesava Bharati Das Goswami Maharaj, I'm happy to participate in passing on this saffron cloth to you with the best wishes and prayers that you may be successful in your devotional life, starting with the Brahmachari ashram. All those who agree with this, please say Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
One more thing. And this comes with some expectations. We know who you are. We know that you have a potential to lead, and especially to manage. And we know that you were a salesman, very successful salesman, and you were a recruiter of salesmen. In case you didn't know, he used to go out on university campuses and recruit men onto his team. And he built up a team so that he was a regional director of a company in America. So there's a great need for this, as we just read, distribution of the literature. So this is the expectation, and I know for a fact, I say this in front of Giriraj, in front of my best friend, who's one of the most empowered preachers on the planet, and in front of all of these wonderful Vaishnavas who come year after year, you're going to do this, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to revolutionize book distribution from the full-time devotee aspect in North America, beginning with Houston. Hare Krishna.
Haribol! Anything?
That was a lot. It was really exciting. I mean, I feel like I felt a year ago that I had wasted so much time trying to figure out where I was supposed to be. And I feel like Krishna's made up for so much lost time.
Stand back here.
Has made up for so much wasted and lost time in the past 4 months. It's been incredible, the journey, and I'm just very honored to be amongst this group of people and here in front of Vaisesika Prabhu and Kesava Bharati Maharaj. It's unbelievable. So thank you both. I really, really appreciate it. And I will not let you down. Hare Krishna.
Go Premanande Haribo! And that brings us to the cow break. We'll be back here at 5:33. Hare Krishna. This performance of sacrifice this performance of sacrifice brings complete satisfaction. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement engage daily in such transcendental activities. Thus, in our Krishna consciousness movement, there is no question of killing animals. 12. There's no question of all of killing animals.
Actually, if you ask Jayadvaita Maharaj, Prabhupada insisted that the books be in American English.
Okay. There are 5 branches. Okay. That's good point. There are 5 branches of irreligion, appropriately known as irreligion, vidharma, religious principles for which one is unfit, paradharma, pretentious religion, abhasa, analogical religion, upadharma, and cheating religion, chaladharma. One who is aware of real religious life must abandon these 5 as irreligious. Purport: any religious principles opposed to the principle of surrendering to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna are to be considered religious principles of irregularity or cheating, and one who is actually interested in religion must give them up. One should simply follow the instructions of Krishna and surrender unto him. To do this, of course, one needs very good intelligence, which may be awakened after many, many births through good association with devotees and the practice of Krishna consciousness. Everything but the principle of religion recommended by Krishna, sarvadharman parityaja mamekam sharanam braja, should be given up as irreligion. 13. Religious principles that obstruct one from following his own religion are called vidharma. Religious by others, dharma. Religion created by and who opposes the principles of the Vedas is called upadharma. And in jugglery of create a new become fashionable. Called swami follow any type of religious system are ultimately in Srimad Bhagavatam fashionable idea because the system is described by the Supreme Sarvadharma Tyaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. The real religion is that of surrender to the feet of the Lord. Next canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, connection with the Jata Yamaraj Sakshat Pranitam. That no one can manufacture at home, manufacture actual religion. Elsewhere it is said, Pumsam Paro Dharmo. The real religious system is that system of progressive Krishna. Paradharma, Upadharma, misinterpretation of Bhagavad Gita is Chaladharma. When Krishna directly says something and some rascal interprets or Shabda words. Various types of
12th canto, it says that one who is expert in words becomes known as a
pretentious system manufactured to willfully neglect the prescribed duties of his life is called abhasa, a dim reflection, false similarity, verisimilitude. If one becomes prescribed duties for his particular or varna, why are they not sufficient to mitigate all material distresses? The principles of varna and ashrama as given in the Shastra. In the Vishnu 3.8.9 it said, Varna Shrama Charata Purushena Paradan Vishnu Ate Panta Toshakara. One should focus for Krishna consciousness. Worship, you should manufacture some concoction fashionable for any rebel or fool to be elected. And there are many missionaries who have with the real clearly said that one who worships the demigods has lost his integrity. Person who has lost all integrity has a temple eating sannyasis there. This type of religious system, its poor is strictly forbidden. Such pretentious religions should be stopped. The original should actually become a brahmana. He should not only take birth in a brahmana family, but must also be qualified. Also, even if one is not born in a brahmana family, but has brahminical qualifications, he must be considered a brahmana. By strictly following the system, one can be happy without extra endeavor. Svabhava vihito dharma nishta prashanta. The real aim of life is to mitigate distress, and you can do this very easily by following the rules of Shastra. By following the principles. That verifies Sankirtan, this book. Tells that Krishna consciousness, how to get free from stress. Oh. just to maintain his body. Although lying in one place, one who maintains his one who obtains his livelihood without it is simply developing, not even try to earn a livelihood to maintain body and soul together. This is illustrated here by the example of the great python, which lies in one place, never going here or and there to earn a livelihood to maintain itself, and yet is maintained by the grace of the Lord. As advised by Narada Muni in Bhagavatam 1.5.18, Tasyaiva heto prayateta ko vido, one should simply endeavor to increase his Krishna consciousness. One should not desire to do anything else, even to earn his livelihood. There are many, many examples of this attitude. Madhavendra Puri, for instance, would never go to anyone to ask for food. Shukadev Goswami has also said, Kasmad bhajanti kavayodhana durmadantan. Why should one approach a person who is blind with wealth? Rather, one should depend on Krishna, and he will give everything. All the members of our sannyas should spread the process of is very much appreciated in poor to try consciousness. English, they say,
yeah.
The time I ever heard it was from Sri Rama.
I'm not up. Because something like important to me. I want to say the word audiobook. It's like play right. I put Chef. It is an English thing, but what? Let. For 6 years at this try. Man, I've been out of America so long. I don't know what it sounds like anymore. North, south, east, or west? 16. Satisfied. His activities with the impersonality of Godhead, residing in everyone's heart, enjoys transcendental endeavoring by lusting all directions where they desire to accumulate wealth. For a person who has suitable shoes on his feet, there is danger, thorns. For him, by their happiness. Okay. Satisfied even with only drinking. Should pung and household dog. Purport. A person of Krishna consciousness will not end service to make control together. A true Brahman is satisfied. He has nothing to eat. He can drink a little water. Practice. Fortunately, in how to be satisfied. He is always satisfied because he feels the presence of the Supersoul within his heart and thinks of him 24 hours a day. That is real satisfaction. A devotee is never driven by the dictations of the tongue and genitals, and thus he is never victimized by the laws of material nature. 19. Because of greed for the sake of the senses, the spiritual strength, education, austerity, and reputation of a devotee or brahmana who is not self-satisfied dwindle, and his knowledge gradually vanishes. Text 20. That's really an important verse. Asantushtasya viprasya tejo vidya tapo yashaha sravanan tindriya lolyena jnanam chaiva kirti. This is a nice verse. Because of greed for the sake of the senses, the spiritual strength, education, austerity, and reputation of a devotee or brahmana who is not self-satisfied dwindle, and his knowledge gradually vanishes. Very important verse. 20. The strong bodily desires and needs of a person disturbed by hunger and thirst are certainly satisfied when he eats. Similarly, if one becomes very angry, that anger is satisfied by chastisement and its reaction. But as for greed, even if a greedy person has conquered all the directions of the world or has enjoyed everything in the world, still he will not be satisfied. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that lust, anger, and greed are the causes of the conditioned soul's bondage in this material world. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajo, guna, samudbhavaha. When strong lusty desires for sense gratification are unfulfilled, one becomes angry. This anger can be satisfied when one chastises his enemy. But when there is an increase in lobha or greed, which is the greatest enemy caused by rajoguna, the mode of passion, how can one advance in Krishna consciousness? If one is very greedy to enhance his Krishna consciousness, this is a great boon. Lolyam ekalam moolam. This is the best path available.
O King Yudhishthira, many persons with varied experience, many legal advisors, many learned scholars, and many persons eligible to become presidents of learned assemblies fall down into hellish life because of not being satisfied with their positions. Purport. For spiritual advancement, one should be materially satisfied, for if one is not materially satisfied, his greed for material development will result in the frustration of his spiritual advancement. There are two things that nullify all good qualities. One is poverty, daridra dosha gunarashi nashi. If one is poverty-stricken, all his good qualities become null and void. Similarly, if one becomes too greedy, his good qualities stricken life. For a devotee is therefore price for spiritual advancement. That this movement. India, especially constructed many temples. For temple construction is not bad, provided consciousness. Greed is to satisfy. Hands with determination. Getting wealth. When saying the truth, one should give up. One way is walking in the street, see so many women. Have sex, he cannot conquer. He is determined. If one is determined not to be envious of anyone, give up to accumulate wealth, to protect the money in one. Anxious about without guilty. Serving a great prideless. By keeping silent, one can avoid obstacles on the path of mystic yoga. And simply by stopping envy. Purport: if one and illusion and cry for the one may over mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha. As the soul transmigrates, one who has taken birth must give up the present body, and then he must certainly accept another body. This should be no cause for lamentation. Therefore, Lord Krishna says, Dhiras tatra namhuhyati. One who is dhira, or sober, who is learned in philosophy and established in knowledge, cannot be unhappy over the transmigration of the soul. 24. By good behavior and freedom from envy, one should counteract sufferings due to other living entities. By meditation and trance, one should counteract sufferings due to providence. And by practicing Hatha Yoga, pranayama, and so forth, one should counteract sufferings due to the body and mind. Similarly, by developing the mode of goodness, especially in regard to eating, one should conquer sleep. Purport: by practice, one should avoid eating in such a way that other living entities will be disturbed and suffer. Since I suffer when pinched or killed by others, I should not attempt to pinch or kill any other living entity. People do not know that because of killing innocent animals, they themselves will have to suffer severe reactions from material nature. Any country where people indulge in unnecessary killing of animals will have to suffer from wars and pestilence imposed by material nature. Comparing one's own suffering to the suffering of others, therefore, one should be kind to all living entities. One cannot avoid the sufferings inflicted by providence, and therefore, when suffering comes, one should fully absorb oneself in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. One can avoid sufferings from the body and mind by practicing mystic Hatha Yoga. 25. One must conquer the modes of passion and ignorance by developing the mode of goodness. And then one must become detached from the mode of goodness by promoting oneself to the platform of Shuddha Sattva. All this can be automatically done if one engages in the service of the spiritual master with faith and devotion. In this way, one can conquer the influence of the modes of nature. Everyone okay?
More than okay.
Yeah?
More than okay.
We're chipper today. Purport. Just by treating the root cause of an ailment, one can conquer all bodily pains and sufferings. Similarly, if one is devoted and faithful to the spiritual master, he can conquer the influences sattva gun, rajagun, and tamagun very easily. If one is devoted and faithful to the spiritual master. Yogis and jnanis practice in many ways to conquer the senses, but the bhakta immediately attains the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the mercy of the spiritual master. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado. If the spiritual master is favorably inclined, one naturally receives the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, one immediately becomes transcendental, conquering all the influences of sattvagun, rajagun, and tamagun within this material world. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Sagunan samatitaitan brahmabhuhyaya kalpate. If one is a pure devotee acting under the directions of the Guru, one easily gets the mercy of the Supreme Lord and thus becomes immediately situated on the transcendental platform. This is explained in the next verse.
Text 26. The spiritual master should be considered to be directly the Supreme Lord because he gives transcendental knowledge for enlightenment. Consequently, for one who maintains the material conception that the spiritual master is an ordinary human being, everything is frustrated. His enlightenment and his Vedic studies and knowledge are like the bathing of an elephant. Purport. It is recommended that one honor the spiritual master as being on an equal status with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sakshat Darittvena Samasta Shastrayi. This is enjoined in every scripture. Acharya mam pijaniyat. One should consider the Acharya to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In spite of all these instructions, if one considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being, one is doomed. His study of the Vedas and his austerities and penances for enlightenment are all useless, like the bathing of an elephant. An elephant bathes in a lake quite thoroughly, but as soon as it comes out on the shore, it takes some dust from the ground and strews it over its body. Thus there is no meaning to the elephant's bath. One may argue by saying that since the spiritual master's relatives and the men of his neighborhood consider him an ordinary human being, what is the fault on the part of the disciple who considers the spiritual master an ordinary human being? This will be answered in the next verse, but the injunction is that the spiritual master should never be considered an ordinary man. One should strictly adhere to the instructions of the spiritual master, for if he is pleased, certainly the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati katopi. Text 27. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is the master of all the other living entities and of the material nature. His lotus feet are sought and worshipped by great saintly persons like Vyasa. Nonetheless, there are fools who consider Lord Krishna an ordinary human being. Purport. The example of Lord Krishna's being the Supreme Personality of Godhead is appropriate in regard to understanding the spiritual master. The spiritual master is called Sevaka Bhagavan, the servitor personality of Godhead, and Krishna is called Sevya Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is to be worshipped. The spiritual master is the worshipper God, whereas the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the worshipable God. This is the difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Another point. Bhagavad Gita, which constitutes the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is presented by the spiritual master as it is, without deviation. Therefore, the absolute truth is present in the spiritual master. As clearly stated in text 26, Jnana Deepa Prade. The Supreme Personality of Godhead gives real knowledge to the entire world, and the spiritual master, as the representative of the Supreme Godhead, carries the message throughout the world. Therefore, on the absolute platform, there is no difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If someone considers the Supreme Personality, Krishna or Lord Ramachandra, to be an ordinary human being, this does not mean that the Lord becomes an ordinary human being. Similarly, if the family members of the spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, consider the spiritual master an ordinary human being, this does not mean that he becomes an ordinary human being. The spiritual master is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore one who is very serious about spiritual advancement must regard the spiritual master in this way. Even a slight deviation from this understanding can create disaster in the disciples' Vedic studies and austerities. Text 28. Ritualistic ceremonies, regulative principles, austerities, and the practice of yoga are all meant to control the senses and mind. But even after one is able to control the senses and mind, if he does not come to the point of meditation upon the Supreme Lord, all such activities are simply labor and frustration. Purport. One may argue that one may achieve the ultimate goal of life, realization of the Supersoul, by practicing the yoga system and ritualistic performances according to the Vedic principles, even without staunch devotion to the spiritual master. The actual fact, however, is that by practicing yoga, one must come to the platform of meditating upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the scriptures, Jnana Vastitatat Katena Manasa Pashanti Yam Yoginaha. A person in meditation achieves the perfection of yoga practice when he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By various practices, one may come to the point of controlling the senses, but simply controlling the senses does not bring one to a substantial conclusion. However, by staunch faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one not only controls the senses, but also realizes the Supreme Lord. Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yatha Devi Tathagaro Tasyaite Katita Yartha Prakashante Mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of the Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. It is further stated, Tushyayam Sarvabhutatma Gurushu Shaya and Taranjagyo Bhavarnavam. Simply by rendering service to the spiritual master, one crosses the ocean of nations and returns home, back to Godhead. Thus he gradually sees the Supreme Lord face to face and enjoys life in association with the Lord. The ultimate goal of yoga is to come in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless this point is achieved, one's so-called yoga practice is simply labor without any benefit. Text 29. As professional activities or business profits cannot help one in spiritual advancement, but are a source of material entanglement, the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies cannot help anyone who is not a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. If one becomes very rich through his professional activities, through trade or through agriculture, this does not mean that he is spiritually advanced. To be spiritually advanced is different from being materially rich. Although the purpose of life is to become spiritually rich, unfortunate men, misguided as they are always engaged in trying to become materially rich. I'll read that again to make sure I read it properly. Although the purpose of life is to become spiritually rich, unfortunate men, misguided as they are always engaged in trying to become materially rich. Such material engagements, however, do not help one in the actual fulfillment of the human mission. On the contrary, material engagements lead one to be attracted to many unnecessary necessities. It's a classic. Which are accompanied by the risk that one may be born in a degraded condition. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:18, Urdvam gachanti satvasta madhyatishtanti rajasaha janagya gunavritista ado gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. Especially in this Kali Yuga, material advancement means degradation and attraction to so many unwanted necessities that create a low mentality. Therefore, Jaganya Gunavritista, since people are contaminated by the lower qualities, they will lead their next lives either as animals or in other degraded forms of life. Making a show of religion without Krishna consciousness may make one popular in the estimation of unintelligent men, but factually, such a materialistic display of spiritual advancement does not help one at all. It will not prevent one from missing the goal of life. Text 30. One who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family and live in a solitary place, free from contaminated association. To maintain the body and soul together, he should beg as much as he needs for the bare necessities of life. Purport. This is the process for conquering the agitation of the mind. One is recommended to take leave of his family and live alone, maintaining body and soul together by begging alms and eating only as much as needed to keep himself alive. Without such a process, one cannot conquer lusty desires. Sannyas means accepting a life of begging, which makes one automatically very humble and meek and free from lusty desires. In this regard, the following verse appears in the Smriti literature. Dvanva hattasya gartasyam jnanabhangadikaranam lakshayitva grihishpashtam sanyasid avicharlayan. In this world of duality, family life is the cause that spoils one's spiritual life or meditation. Specifically understanding this fact, one should accept the order of sannyas without hesitation.
Thus ends tonight's reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll take it up again tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. Thank you very much for joining in this yagya. Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo. Vanchakalpataruscha Kripasnabhevcha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Natakoti Vaishnavibhi ki jai.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.